Hello and welcome to The Point. Today we have with us a well-known politician and a former entrepreneur, Mr. Rajeev Chandrasekhar with us. Sir, welcome to Rajya Sabha Television and welcome to this show. Let's straight away begin with an issue which has been making headlines almost in a 24-hour clock since last, say, almost a week, since the day the decision has been taken. That was 8th of November when the Prime Minister in a televised national address announced that the 500 and 1,000 rupee denomination currency will no longer be a legal tender. That's the policy of demonetization. There has been a lot of criticism which has been coming in from the opposition parties. You're also a member of parliament. You've written a number of articles. You've spoken at length about what changes needs to be brought into the way our economy is handled. So what do you make of this decision on demonetization?
Look, Vishal, I think let's start with the premise and the understanding that black money constitutes the biggest danger and the biggest risk to our democracy. It is not just a conceptual danger, it is a issue that has for the last 7 decades, corroded the core of our, not just the democracy, but of politics, of elections, and of government and governance. So, to address black money head on, you needed to do demonetization. There was no way around demonetization if any government was serious about black money. This government and this Prime Minister has been absolutely serious about black money and hence demonetization. Now, you can argue that the demonetization has caused disruption. And I have written about this. I wrote about this on the day demonetization was announced, that there is no way of avoiding disruption. But there is a school of thought, and there are some things that have then unfolded, which leads me to believe that some in the bureaucracy and some probably in the Reserve Bank of India underestimated the disruption and the impact of the disruption on the weaker segments of society.
So do you agree with the viewpoint that the planning could have been done in a much better way than it has been done right now to tackle the things?
Look, I think it is very easy to be in television studios or in parliament outside the system and to commentate on difficult decisions that the government takes. Could it have been better? I think yes. Was it going to be able to avoid the disruption and inconvenience to people? No, because rich or poor, middle class or young small business, the disruption of having to surrender the money and get new money would not have been avoidable. It could not have been avoided. Could things have been done a little better for the lower strata of society? Probably yes. But that is the very nature of bureaucracy and you know, institutions like Reserve Bank of India. They tend to be a little let us say, distant from the common, the people at the bottom of our pyramid. And that is something that Prime Minister, as soon as he's come back, has rushed in. A task force has now been created so that ATMs are, calibrated faster. So to answer your question, political parties' criticism is what political parties do. But for you and me, the answer to whether the government or the government machinery could have planned this better, probably yes.
In terms of your answer, that's probably yes. One thing which is very important out here is that apart from the objections which are raised by political parties, and you're right, it is the duty of the political parties to raise political points, but then those political points do have their, positive aspects as well. And there are experts also now coming out suggesting after 4 or 5 days watching what has been happening on the streets, watching what has been happening in the banks, in front of the ATMs, one point which is being raised is that the claim that it was very well prepared, the government was prepared, the RBI was prepared, the currency was printed earlier, But it seems even if the currency was, or rather is right now in sufficient amount available with the banks, with the RBI or the government, the way it is reaching to the people, or that route specifically through ATMs, is something which has not at all been smoothened over the last 7-10 days.
No, Vishal, I think there are two issues here that needs to be understood, and unfortunately, I don't think anybody in the government has articulated this. One is that there was a need for confidentiality. And so therefore, only very few people in the government could have been prepared for this.
Could have been
By the very nature of this process, the entire banking system and indeed most of RBI would have been kept in the dark about when this was going to happen and how it was going to happen. So therefore, there is a legitimate problem arising out of confidentiality that people will react only after the 8th. So therefore, you must give the system 2 or 3 or 4 days after being told on the 8th that demonetization is happening to respond. And now you can see that 5-6 days later, the system is kicking in. Number one. Number two, don't forget that the problem of black money is so endemic and so rooted in our system कि for every genuine way we try and help a common man, uska fayda, there is hundreds of people who are in the system who have developed black money for so many years who will use that
opportunity.
So unfortunately what is happening, a common man, an innocent citizen today is paying the cost of the last 7 decades of corruption and black money. It is true that the common man is paying the cost, but they are paying unfortunately the cost of the negligence and the corruption and the black money of the last many years that have been allowed to go free and unfettered.
Okay, that has been about the implementation part and how it has affected the common man on the streets, how that could have been avoided or could not have been avoided. Apart from that, one major reason which was given behind taking this decision by the Prime Minister himself was that this will help in rooting out black money, something which you also pointed out just a short while back. Now, there are 2-3 viewpoints which are coming in. One is that, and those viewpoints are coming in from the ideologues of the ruling party itself, that this will not help in a to a larger extent. Maybe 3% to 4% is the black money which we can look forward to being rooted out through this particular process. Second aspect is that this is going to, or rather was going to help the RBI and the banks in solidifying their financial health, or rather making them a little more sound in terms of financial logistics they have.
We must think of black money as a cancer. It is something whose tentacles have crept through our entire system and has spread far and wide. Now, just like a serious disease like cancer cannot be cured by one visit to the hospital or one medicine, black money cannot be cured by one act of demonetization. It will require, as the Prime Minister himself said in Japan, it will require a series of things to be done. And the government is moving. I can see, I'm not in the government, from outside the government, they gave an opportunity till September 30th for people to voluntarily disclose. Now they are saying we are going to demonetize. That means we take out the cash from the system. Now the next 2 targets are going to be gold and land, which are the other areas where black money finds refuge. So for those who are serious about ridding this country of black money, the answer is demonetization is one step. It is not the only step. Demonetization is a first step. It is not the last step. There will be a second, third, fourth, fifth steps required. Because 70 years of negligence and neglect and black money's tentacles spread all over the country cannot be removed in 2 months or 30 days. This will require a concerted effort of 1, 2, 3, 4 years with a political leadership that is uncorruptible and is determined to cleanse the economy of black money. So to answer your question, demonetization is a start. It is not the end. And there will be many other steps that the government will have to take if they're serious about black money.
As the Prime Minister has already pointed out, that be prepared, specifically those who are corrupt, be prepared for more such surgical strikes, quote unquote, said.
Or whatever strikes, yes.
Okay. Let's. What about the second point, which is about this boosting the bank's financial health?
Look, I think,
is that going to happen actually?
I don't think that was ever the objective of demonetization. The demonetization, if I am an economist or if I'm an advisor to the government, the basic objective of demonetization is to take the black money out of the economy and hopefully part of that convert it in and bring it back into legitimate formal economy.
But in the first 3 days, almost around 50,000 crore rupees were deposited in SBI alone.
So therefore, in the process of moving the illegal economy into the formal economy, the conduit was going to be the banks. And therefore, the banks are the ones who are going to see higher deposits. The banks are going to be the ones who are going to see lowering of interest rates. The banks are going to be the ones who are going to see expansion of their balance sheets. And therefore, larger ability to formally lend. Now, for example, I'll tell you one of the benefits that is going to come out of this. Home prices are going to come down because there is going to be no cash elements in the real estate sector. Now, what is happening simultaneously is money in the banks is going up. So the formal lending ability of banks to consumers who want to buy a home, like you and me want to buy a home now, it will be easier for you to go buy a home where most of the home value will be financed through white money, through a bank loan, which earlier was you would take a 50% of the value from the bank and you would have to find 50% of the money in cash. Now, because there is no cash, the value of the home comes down. Banks will find it easier to do legitimate consumer financing. Exactly.
So, in a way, though this did not seem to be the primary motive, but then in some way or the other, banks, specifically the public sector banks, which have been fighting, huge NPAs, this is a boost to them as well.
Which goes back to the final point that ridding black money from the economy is not a moral argument. It actually improves the economy. In the medium term, it benefits a common man. It lowers the cost of borrowing. It allows a common man to borrow more from the banking sector. So there are many benefits. Apart from the moral argument saying illegality and corruption will be removed, it also improves the overall state of affairs for a consumer in the medium and long term.
Okay, let's take a short break here, and when we come back, we will again have conversation with Rajeev Chandrasekhar about the other important aspect as far as the tough decisions on the economic fronts being taken by the Modi government is concerned, and that is the introduction of GST bill. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Independent Member of Parliament Rajeev Chandrasekhar is still with us. So there was an elaborate discussion about the hot topic which is being debated everywhere, that's demonetization. Let's come to the next very important step, something which the government has been trying to do for almost a year now. That's rollout of the GST, the goods and services tax.
Right.
One step is clear. The constitutional amendment bill has already been cleared by the parliament.
Right.
Now the winter session is on and the government is hoping that the supplementary legislations which talk about fixing the cap on the percentage of tax which will be taken in terms of GST and other legalities which have to be finalized. One very important point as far as GST is concerned, and something which has happened in the last few meetings of the GST Council which you come across, is that states want control over businesses whose turnover is more than 1.5 crore. If that happens, will it serve the purpose? Will still the GST serve the purpose for which it was mooted in the initial stages?
Look, my own view is that dual administration of GST is not a good idea.
Okay.
I do not subscribe, and I don't think it is good for the overall objective of GST, which is simpler tax administration, simpler for the small businesses, easier for small businesses to do business, etc., etc. For there to be this duality of administration, where states administer very small and small businesses, and the center administers medium and large businesses. I know those issues are being still discussed in the GST Council. My own view, my own hope is that the states, given that they have been given an assurance of revenue neutrality, given that the whole idea of GST is a large Indian common market with ease of doing business through a more technology-based tax administration system, that the states basically ask for a waiver of a certain size of business, not administering that small business, but saying, look, there will be no GST applicable to a certain size of business, maybe 50 lakhs, maybe 75 lakhs, 1 crore, whatever it is. Rather than saying the states will administer a certain turnover of business and the center will administer a lot. I think GST is meant to be a centrally administered indirect taxation regime, and I would hope that the final legislation that is brought to Parliament reflects that.
So you're completely against the idea of splitting taxpayers between state governments and the centre?
I don't mind certain threshold of businesses being exempt from indirect taxation, but I would think it's inelegant to have states administer one group of companies and the center administering another group of companies.
Another important aspect of GST is the cap of the tax which has to be collected in terms of GST. Now we've seen the opposition disrupting the parliament proceedings, making it point, and something because of which during the monsoon session there was a lot of trouble for the government, political trouble to say. They wanted the tax rates to be fixed at 18%. Now the GST Council has given few slabs, saying that some products will be in this particular slab, some will be in this. Does that in the end benefit the common man? Because there is an argument that this might pinch the pockets of common people like me and you.
Now look, I think the GST has in a sense drifted away because of the need for political consensus from what you would think is perfect. Okay. It is what we have today is less than perfect. I would have preferred very limited slabs. I would have preferred a slab at the very high end for punitive, for tobacco, for things like that. And I would have preferred one and maybe another one at the bottom. Now what I read about in the media, and I have not seen the bill, is that there are 4 or 5 slabs.
There are 5 slabs.
Yeah, 5 slabs. So therefore, I don't think it is the ideal situation, but if that is what the consensus brings up, that is the way to go forward. Because what we need to be focused on is, even if an imperfect GST is better than no GST or a delayed GST, I would rather be focused on 1 April 2017 to launch GST with all of its imperfection, and then allow the GST Council to modify, improve it as this new indirect taxation regime takes hold. Because I believe, and there is enough empirical evidence to suggest that, as the indirect tax base widens, there will be automatic incentive to moderate the slabs, excepting for the very top punitive levels. So I am impatient after so many years, and as you know, I served on the select committee for GST. I'm impatient for the indirect taxation regime to start. So I am quite okay to compromise today. If I were asked, I'm not asked obviously, to go with a multiple less than perfect structure of multiple slabs, start it, and then have the GST Council reform it as you go along.
Reform it as and when it is
and
required.
Evolve it. Yes.
Evolution process is what you would prefer, rather than waiting for consensus to arrive.
All tax reforms in India have always evolved. When we start with something, and what you end up with after some years is a process of evolution, is a process of getting real data from the field in terms of what its impact is. And I think this will also evolve.
Well, let's wait and watch. This evolution is going to take place on the floor of both the houses, and the winter session is on. So let's wait and watch as to how things move from here. And let's hope that that 1st April deadline, which has been given by the government, is something which the government meets. Let's move on to next very important thing, and that's also really important for this particular winter session, because that's a private member's bill and a resolution which has been moved by you, which states that Pakistan should be declared as a terrorist state. So what is it based on? Why they are taking such a harsh stand, and something which the NDA government's policy seems to be slightly on that line, but you've gone a step further.
No, I think there is not one Indian today who does not believe Pakistan is a terror state. If you ask any Indian today, and I'm willing to bet my last money on it, everybody, not only in India, most people around the world consider Pakistan as the origin of terrorism.
But Pakistan has been given MFN status by
Exactly.
India.
So I think as a country that has long since been the biggest sufferer of terrorism from Pakistan, and remember this is November 2016, which is 8 years ago this month, we suffered the Mumbai terror attacks. So there is enough memories and history around us to keep telling us that Pakistan is a terror state. One of the big ironies is that as we have and previous governments have gone around the world trying to get the world to declare Pakistan a terror state, we have not done so. Our parliament has not done so. Our people have not had the opportunity of getting our parliament to declare Pakistan a terror state. When every day, morning to evening, we experience Pakistan's terror attacks on India. So I think it is necessary for parliament and indeed, I hope even the government to say the people of India believe Pakistan is a terror state. This is not MPs believing Pakistan is a terror state. This is not a political party believing Pakistan is a terror state. It's the people of India whose representatives are in parliament. They believe that Pakistan is a terror state. Now, what does that mean? Do we cancel the MFN status? Do we abrogate the Indus Water Treaty? Do we prevent overflight of Pakistan aircraft? Do we prevent Pakistani vessels from entering India? Do we prevent Pakistan from engaging in trade, commerce, or remittances of money? Those are all issues the parliament can debate.
That brings in a very important question out here, and that is that, there has been a lot of criticism of NDA government's foreign policy vis-a-vis Pakistan. The opposition has been saying that there have been, several U-turns which have been taken by the NDA government. They've been first soft on Pakistan, then they've been hard on Pakistan. First they have called for talks, then they have, taken a step back. Do you agree with the kind of, stand which has been taken by the NDA government, specifically the way India's foreign policy vis-a-vis Pakistan has gone so far? And are you hopeful that when this bill comes up for discussion in this session or the next, that the government, you will get support from the government benches?
No, so insofar as the government's approach towards Pakistan, let's make one thing very clear, Vishal. Every prime minister and every government in India has a moral obligation to try and approach Pakistan with an olive branch.
For dialogue.
Yes, it is our DNA. As India, this is what we do. We don't go in and say, you 10 years you have been bad to us and therefore I'm a new Prime Minister and I will be hostile to you. The Prime Minister of India and the government of India has done exactly what is expected from them. Go back to Pakistan and offer an olive branch and offer a mutually acceptable, mutually respectful relationship. Pakistan has turned that down. Now the government of India and the people of India have within its rights, very legitimate moral legal rights, to use every one of its toolkit, moral, diplomatic, economic and military, to effectively defend ourselves from the terror and the terrorism and the state-sponsored kinds of violence from Pakistan. So I absolutely see no contradiction. I see no U-turns. I don't understand what people are talking about. Insofar as the government supporting this, I do not know. I hope the government supports, because I think the people of India want Pakistan to be declared a terror state. On that, I can assure you that even if the government goes and does an opinion poll outside today, around the country, as far as Northeast or South or even in Jammu and Kashmir, they will say Pakistan without doubt is the country that is destabilizing not just India, it is destabilizing the world, South Asia, and there is enough justification for Pakistan and its people to be told, look, do something about your terror DNA, reform yourself, become a responsible nation, and it will start with us calling them a terror state.
Well, if that happens, that is in terms of, government supporting your legislation, then as per the rules and regulations, you're also aware, then the government will have to adopt the bill,
I'm hopeful.
Bring in official bill. We are running very short of time. Let's take one more question on a related aspect. A letter written by you to the Home Minister asking, to take stringent steps on FCRA, violations, bring in more FCRA guidelines to keep in check those organizations which make use of the loopholes for terror funding. So what is it exactly that you are pointing at?
I think there have been recent media reports, and there was particularly a TV investigative report that showed how FCRA is being used to bring in money from countries in the Middle East, ostensibly for education and other community development purposes for the minorities of this country, but effectively they are creating pockets of violent, rabid beliefs against the state, against the country. And it is not just about, it is not about Islam or non-Islam. It is also creating prejudice, and it is taking away and creating disadvantages for the Muslims of India, because this money is coming in and propagating and helping propagate a very violent stream of Islam, the Salafist Islam, in certain madrasas, and it is creating problems for the law-abiding Muslims and the proper Muslim citizens of
so
this
you
country.
want the government to bring in guidelines to
I
keep a check on
want
that.
government to say, if a media agency can look at this and find out the loopholes, why is the government not coming up with much more stringent guidelines on how money comes into India, and how, for example, why do we need foreign money to fund temples, mosques or churches anymore? Let the money come and fund schools, hospitals, which is what the country and the communities require.
Okay, wonderful. Let's hope your views are taken on board by the government, and all the best wishes for your private members, which will be taken up in the parliament. Thank you so much. So this was the Member of Parliament, Rajeev Chandrasekhar, a former entrepreneur as well, with clear views on several issues, including demonetization, the GST, and why not declare Pakistan a terror state, with effect to which he is also going to bring a private members resolution in the upper house. We'll come back next week with a different guest on a different topic. Till then, stay tuned.